Hello everyone. Today we're going to analyze a dialogue between two individuals, Bill and Taylor. Our goal is to identify the conclusion, reasons, and any fallacies in their reasoning. Let's start by listening to Bill and Taylor in a heated exchange.
Countries that harbor terrorists who want to destroy the United States must be considered enemies of the United States. Any country that does not relinquish terrorists to the American justice system is clearly on the side of the terrorists. This sort of action means that the leaders of these countries do not wish to see justice done to the terrorists and care more about hiding murderers, rapists, thieves, and anti-democrats.
That's exactly the kind of argument that I would expect from someone who has relatives who worked for the CIA. But it seems to me that once you start labeling countries that disagree with America on policy as enemies, then eventually almost all countries will be considered our enemies. And we will be left with no allies.
The conclusion in this dialogue is that the countries that harbor terrorists and do not relinquish them to the American justice system are enemies of the United States. And here are the reasons given to support Bill's conclusion. These countries are on the side of the terrorists. The leaders of these countries do not wish to see justice done to the terrorists. And these countries care more about hiding criminals and anti-democrats. Now let's identify and analyze the fallacies in this dialogue. We see an example of the ad hominem fallacy in Taylor's response. Taylor attacks Bill's argument by referring to his relatives who worked for the CIA rather than addressing the argument itself. This is a personal attack and does not contribute to the discussion about countries harboring terrorists. Bill's argument contains a false dilemma fallacy. He presents the situation as if there are only two options. A country is either with the United States or against it. This oversimplification ignores the possibility of a neutral country, or maybe like a country that might disagree with us on certain issues, but they're not necessarily an enemy. Third, Taylor's argument contains a slippery slope fallacy. Taylor assumes that if we start labeling countries that disagree with America as enemies, then eventually almost all of the countries will be considered our enemies. And that's just not true. She also states that we will have no allies. This argument assumes a chain of events that's not necessarily inevitable, like it's not going to happen. It could, but really unlikely. And then lastly, Bill's argument also contains an appeal to emotion fallacy. He uses emotionally charged language, which isn't inherently obvious at first because he's just listing off things, sort of nouns, but they come with very strong connotations. He uses words like murderers, rapists, thieves, and anti-democrats to stir up sort of negative emotions and distract from the actual argument. So, in conclusion, while the dialogue presents a serious topic, both Bill and Taylor's arguments contained logical fallacies that weakened their positions. We have to critically analyze arguments on both sides, regardless of how we feel. The first passage was emotionally triggering for me, but I had to remove myself and set myself into a sort of objective viewpoint to properly analyze it fairly. But for us to critically analyze arguments for such fallacies, we have to be sure that we're balanced and using logical discussion. Otherwise, our arguments are weak. So thank you for watching.